college experience and kind of what my mindset was. So I was on a little different track when I was in high school. So I did not know necessarily what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. So I thought I wanted to be in the medical field. So, but I wasn't sure. So I went to Tacoma Community College first, and I just sort of, I knew I wanted to get a associate's degree, just a general one. So I got an associate's degree in fine arts, because I wanted to get sort of a taste of a bunch of different subjects. So I wanted to sort of do a little exploration of what I found interesting. So I went to, so when I got to TCC, I took a bunch of classes. I really liked my educational ones, and I liked my psychology ones. So for a while, I was thinking I wanted to become a teacher, or at least work somewhere in education. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so that was essentially my general experience at Tacoma Community College. Is I kind of left there thinking I wanted to become a teacher or work in education. So I got my associate's degree. I transferred to Washington State University. And then that's what I fell in love with that. So then I kind of thought, wait a minute, I want to work with people who might be having a hard time as far as like wanting to talk it out, or anything I could do where I felt like I could sit down and talk to someone and help them. That's exactly what I wanted to do. So I ended up majoring in psychology, and I knew that wouldn't necessarily get me a job. So I did some research and found that counseling was right up my alley. And so I applied to University of Puget Sound, and that's where I did my master's program, and that's where I got my counseling certificate. So how I kind of came into counseling and sort of found that it was my passion was I did take a counseling and clinical psychology class at Washington State, and it was one of those things where I wanted to try it out, and I did definitely end up falling in love with it. So when I was taking the class, I liked learning about all of the different styles of counseling, the humanistic, the behavioral, all of the strategies counselors are trained in. I found them fascinating, and I just thought, like, I want to learn more of that. It was sort of like a lightning strike. It was like, that's exactly what I want to do. So my setbacks were more of not necessarily being guided on where to go and what to do. I always knew I was going to go to college. I knew that. I knew that from a very young age. But how to do financial aid or taking high school more seriously, that wasn't necessarily something talked about. And there was just a few missing pieces as far as being aware of, I should work harder now, therefore I can get into a better college, or maybe I have a better idea where to apply to after high school. I felt just sort of lost. So I felt like a lot of I was basically my only friend who kind of hung back and went to community college. Most of my other friends ended up going to 4 years straight away, because they had at least an idea or a really good idea what they wanted to do, where I felt more lost and was sort of still exploring. So I feel like as far as setbacks, it was just sort of the lack of knowledge of how to explore a career or how to take high school serious in the moment. Because even if I wanted to go to a 4-year, there probably would have been limited options, just because to be honest, I didn't have the best GPA. So I didn't have a ton of options as well. So I probably could have gone to a few of our 4-year universities in Washington, but definitely would not have had as many doors if I knew how much GPA and like SAT scores mattered. Would I do anything differently? Where I am now, I wouldn't change it for anything. I love what I do. I love working with students. I love the population I work with. So as far as what I know now, I wouldn't do anything differently. I'm actually really happy the way everything worked out, and I've got a really good team here. I've got really good students I work with. So no, not necessarily I wouldn't change anything. doors will open, windows will open, as long as you work hard. So I think if I would have had more guidance or more information about where to go, I think, sure, maybe I might be somewhere else, but I think doing your own self-exploration, trying to figure out sort of who you are, and sort of being on my own. I still lived at home, but having my friends out at their four-year universities kind of gave me time to sort of figure out who I was and what I found appealing or what I was passionate about. I felt like I was sort of oh yeah, that sounds great. You know what, I kind of want to do what you're doing. Oh, actually, you know what you told me, that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll go into that. Doing my associate's degree on my own actually kind of helped figure out who I was. Society pressure? Oh yeah. So when I kept real quiet when I wasn't planning on going to a four-year university because where I grew up, college was just expected. So if you weren't going to college, it was almost sort of taboo. So, or at least to a four-year university. So going to community college at the time was almost embarrassing in a way. Like, it was something I didn't necessarily want to talk about a lot. Like, my friends were, of course, they were supportive and stuff, but like there were a couple times where, you know, my friends would be talking and they'd sort of forget that I went to a community college, and they would say something like, oh, well, I'm just at a community college or something, you know, some kind of comment, and then they'd forget, and then they'd look at me and be like, I'm so sorry. And so, but, you know, turns out that, you know, I was the, you know, first one to get a master's degree in my friend group, and the second one to buy a house, but the only one to buy a house on their own. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? So you can look at success in a bunch of different ways in that context, but yeah, it was definitely, there are some societal pressures, and you just kind of, you feel them, and it's one of those things where everyone has a different track, and it's kind of hard to explain that to a high school student that you can choose any path you want, just make sure it's the path that you want to go, and it's going to be the best path for you. Advice that I would give would be, yeah, do some self-exploration. Do a career interest survey, or start, you know, figuring out what you're passionate about. Do you like talking with people, or do you like numbers? Do you like, you know, do you want to cure cancer? You know what I mean? Like, what like, are there some big things that you have some life goals that you want to accomplish? And then whether you go to a community college or an apprenticeship program or, you know, four-year university, you can start taking classes that are interesting to you, and they might be that lightning strike. There will be a moment where you're like, you know what, this is it, and you can start going that way. And so it might not be 1 to 2 years. Like, I felt fortunate that it only took me a couple of years to kind of figure out, like, this is what I want to do. Not everybody's going to figure it out that fast, but I think when you are exploring and taking classes, that's the best way to figure out what you're passionate about, figure out what you want to do as a career, and hopefully you'll be in a career that you find satisfying, and you'll feel successful.